This morning's text from the third chapter of the book of Exodus describes one of the turning points within Moses' life. A life which had had its share of action and adventure, but which had ultimately settled down into the sedate, routine, and predictable existence of a shepherd. The mountain upon which he had this experience was known as Mount Horeb, or the mountain of God. It was believed to be a special place, a holy place, a place where God dwelt. But God is omnipresent, which means everywhere. God is not confined to a mountain any more than God is confined to a building in which we gather to worship once a week. God is bigger than that. God is bigger than any place we can imagine, bigger than any religion we can invent, bigger than any label or description we can come up with, bigger than any disease with which we may be diagnosed, and bigger than any event we can experience. The vastness of God was described by a psalmist who wrote, "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night. Even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you." So when God spoke on the mountain and told Moses that the ground upon which he stood was holy ground, it wasn't because he was standing upon Mount Horeb instead of standing on some other patch of land. The ground was holy because Moses was aware of God's presence there. When we become aware of God and we experience God, then the ground upon which we stand at that moment is holy ground, wherever it may be. I have experienced God in the receiving of food donations for people who are hungry. And wherever that happens is holy ground. I have experienced God in the morning as I sit outside on my back porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sky turn pearly pink as the sun comes up. And that porch is holy ground. I have experienced God at the annual hunger walk when I walked a few short miles along the holy ground of the sidewalks that follow the Brazos River. I and other walkers from other faith communities, all of us joined together to raise money to feed people globally and locally. These are all good, positive experiences that leave us with warm feelings inside. But God is bigger than all our good and positive experiences. God is also within our pain and suffering. God is experienced in our tears and loneliness, our fear and confusion. And those moments can be just as transformative as the good and warm moments that I have mentioned. What makes them transformative and holy is whether or not we are able to recognize the voice of God calling out to us at that particular place and time. And that transformational, holy moment can be a turning point in our lives. In this morning's reading, Moses was destined for just such a transformational moment. We find him looking after his father-in-law's flock of sheep, staying out of trouble, minding his own business. But on this particular day, he decided to explore the land. Instead of grazing his flocks in the wilderness as he usually did, Moses decided to take them a little further. He decided to take them beyond the wilderness to the mountain in the distance. And it was on that mountain that we read that Moses saw a bush that was on fire, which may not have been so amazing in and of itself. But what was amazing was the fact that the bush was not consumed by the fire. The burning bush can be seen as a metaphor for those surprising, frightening, painful, transformational turning points in life. Moses was probably accustomed to experiencing God within the warm summer days and mountain breezes. But now he was learning that God is also found in the surprising upheavals of our daily routines. God's voice also calls out to us when our worlds are rocked and our faith is shaken. Our lives are marked at different times by tragedy and trauma. Our worlds are overturned and we're pretty sure that we will never recover. Like the bush which Moses discovered, our very spirits feel as if they are engulfed by flames that will, by all accounts, consume and destroy us. For instance, when our parents tell us we are no longer welcome at home if we choose to bring our partner with us. We feel a raging inferno that threatens to consume us. When the minister that baptized us declares us to be an abomination, we feel as if our spirits are being burned away. And when the walls of our closeted lives seem as if they are closing in on us, we are sure that we will suffocate from the flames that engulf us. Instinct tells us to avoid the pain by turning away from the flames, to pretend that they don't really exist. But Moses didn't turn away. We read that he said to himself, I must turn aside and look at this great sight and see why the bush is not burned up. If we can summon our courage and look into the flames instead of turning away from them, we will discover that we can survive the inferno that we thought would destroy us. And not only that, but if we listen carefully, we will hear the voice of God speak to us out of our suffering. You see, God's presence is not only in the morning music of the birds or in the color splashes of the sunset. We find God not only in the quiet summer evening or the comfort of a lover's touch. If we are able to look at the suffering in our lives, those places that were engulfed by an inferno of flames that threatened to destroy us, but didn't. If we can turn aside and bravely look at those horrific moments, instead of trying to amputate those experiences from our existence, if we look on them, we will hear the voice of God speak to us. And that voice will tell us that where we are standing is sacred and holy. And why is it holy? It's not because of the location or the time in our lives that the event has occurred. And it's not because of anything we have done. What has made the experience sacred is the fact that we have managed to hear God's voice even in our suffering. And when we hear the voice of God calling out in our suffering, we cannot leave the place the same as we arrived. In this morning's story, God called Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. God called him to return to the very place he had run away from, the place which had been such a source of pain and conflict in his life. But the reason he was called back to that place was so he could lead others from their own suffering, out from their own bondage of slavery. And I believe that is what God is asking of you and me. We look around us and congratulate ourselves on our good fortune because we have discovered a family of faith which affirms us as children of God. We can authentically experience community and worship God without pretending to be someone whom we are not. But we have been called to look into the flames of suffering which we have experienced and which our sisters and brothers are experiencing. And when we do, we will hear the voice of God. And God's voice is telling us that there is a whole tribe of people just like us who are still enslaved. And it's up to us to do something about that. 19-year-old Marcellus Andrews was kicked and beaten to death a little over a week ago in Waterloo, Iowa, as anti-gay slurs were hurled at him by his assailants. This past May, Chrissy Lee Polis, a 22-year-old transgender woman, was attacked at a McDonald's restaurant and dragged by the hair from the front to the back of the restaurant. The incident, which was filmed and posted on YouTube, showed McDonald's employees doing nothing to stop the attack and actually laughing. Friends, if you can't hear the voice of God calling out of this blaze of hatred and suffering, then you need to stop for a moment and listen more closely. We are being called to end the suffering. Don't turn away. Look at the pain and recognize the moment as sacred and holy. Because God has called us to be God's instruments of peace. Burning bush moments are sacred moments, and they are transformational moments. They are defining moments in our lives when we make a decision to hear and obey God's voice, which calls us to justice. Either that, or we simply continue on our way, pretending that we never saw a thing. We quietly move along to new pasture and act as if nothing ever happened. We turn the channel on the television or quickly move to another web page, one that isn't so disturbing. So which will it be? Friends, your feet are on holy ground. God's voice is speaking to you out of your suffering and calling you to do something about others who are suffering. Will we answer God's voice as Moses did with the words, "Here I am," or will we turn away? May we each find the courage to look into the flames of pain and suffering that threaten to consume our lives. And when we do, may we each hear God's reassuring voice telling us that we are not alone, that God is with us. And may we recognize that moment as holy and sacred.